Don't miss our 10 tips and tactics to make the Dark Eldar army work even better.
Spiking bits.
Welcome back, Hobby Maniacs. I'm Baer, and today we are doing our obligatory Codex breakdown. Another week, another Codex. It's Dark Eldar time. This book, I mean, I don't even know where to start. I literally didn't. I sat here and I was just like, I don't know where to start with this thing. Everything is so cool and so good that I just want to talk about it all. So we had to really hyper-focus this time and not go through all the pages to give you guys what I think is a pretty good look and some tips and tactics on where to start and kind of the directions to go for the new Dark Eldar Codex. So here it is. Pray they don't keep you alive. Now the new book, it's a little smaller than what we would expect. It's about 125. I guess it's about, you know, slightly smaller than the Space Marine book. It comes with 30 data sheets in here. We'll just show you the table of contents real quick. So you got 30 data sheets and all sorts of manner of abilities. Of course, it's laid out just the same that we would expect with all the data sheets, the rules, the initial rules and stuff in the front here. And then, of course, you've got all the painted miniatures up in this area. The stuff about all the cabals, the cults, the covens. Then you've got all of your characters and the units and stuff right here, breaking it all down. And nothing that we haven't seen before, right? So then let's jump to the rules themselves. So the book itself is laid out pretty clever, to be quite honest, than what we've seen in the past. So first off, you've got the special abilities and stuff, and then when you get past the data sheets, you get into the breakdown of, you know, like stuff if you take a Battleforged army and stuff. So let's just touch on check out the overall stuff just to give you an idea of how the index is. You've probably already heard by now at this point, or for those of you that just want kind of a quick recap, this is kind of our first tip here, like how the book's laid out and all the special rules. So you got Power from Pain, you got Combat Drugs. They're both abilities that the units have to have on their data sheet in order to use. Not everything has it, but then again, for the most stuff in here is keyword Drukhari, which is also going to be something that we'll talk about here in a second. So just know that Power for Pain works based on the battle round that it is, and Combat Drugs, you can either pick them, and you can only take one instance of each until you go through all 6 of them, or you can roll from them. You can't do both. You can't pick and choose. Power from Pain is pretty good because the first one right off the bat on turn 1, you get a Feel No Pain of a 6-up, basically. The second one is a reroll. This distances the dice, both dice. So for charges, that's going to be good. Determine how far a unit with this bonus moves when it advances or charges. And then 3, Cleansing Fury is add 1 to hit rolls made for units with this bonus in the fight phase. Then you automatically pass morale checks at 4 and at 5. Subtract 1 from the leadership of the enemy within 6 of any models with this bonus at the morale phase. Combat Drugs, you got +1 attack, +1 strength, +2 movement characteristic, +1 to toughness, +1 to weapon skill, or +2 to leadership characteristic. Now jumping to the back to go over the other rules real quick, the other army-wide, I guess you could almost call them army-wide special rules, but not everybody has it, but it's available for the most part to some of the folks in here. You've got the obsessions, which are basically like, you know, your seps or your dynasties for Necrons, etc., etc. But before we get to that, there's a quick little thing we need to talk about. The Raiding Force ability is really interesting. So if you take at least 3 patrol detachments in a Battleforged army, you receive +4 command points. Now, most tournaments probably won't let you take multiple detachments. Like this ability here would give you, if you take 6 or more Drukhari patrol attachments, you receive 8 command points. You probably won't get that in a competitive type event, which usually limits to 3 detachments, but it's definitely worth talking about right there. And then the obsessions are all keyed off of keywords. You've got cabals, which are just your normal stock kind of dude mans. You got your witch cults, and you got your homunculi coven. So you got your normal ground troops, your crazy psycho, like frenzy people, which are both male and female. And then you've got your covens, which are just the crazy monsters. So this book is just all sorts of full of surprises. A couple of caveats that you need to be aware of. Just like with the I guess in the Tau book would be the best example. You have the Vespids and such, or the Kroot. They do not take away from these obsessions if you have them in the detachment. Now, to get the benefit of these obsessions, you have to be all of the same, either cult, coven, or cabal in the detachment. You can't take mixed detachments. That's not an issue. You can have cabals and you can have cults, but you're not going to be able to get a benefit that are on the following pages here. And there's 10 of them. There's 3 for the homunculus, 3 for the witch cult, and 4 for the cabals right there. Also, there's additional restrictions to some of the court models, like the Snake Mans and the, you know, stuff like that. And then your beasts, there's also detachments on out of that. We're not really going to cover any of that, but if you are super serious about playing Dark Eldar, make sure you read those so you don't accidentally make your army invalid there. In addition to all of that, we're going to have all sorts of stratagems. There's 33 stratagems, 30 data sheets, 33 stratagems. Then we've got the artifacts in here too. I think there's 16 of those bad boys. And the warlord traits, which, believe it or not, there's actually 19 of them. It's kind of crazy. 19 warlord traits. So there's going to be 10 that are specific to the cabals, or the cabal, cult, and coven. So there's going to be 1 for each one of these, and then your generic 6. Which also, there's 10 specifically keyed stratagems as well that are keyed also to either a cabal, cult, or coven. So lots of options here, but some of them are a little bit more restrictive. So that's kind of the overview of everything in here. Now, a couple of quick changes also in our overview that you should be aware of is the Trueborns are no longer in here. Vect, of course, is not in here. I guess you could take the Trueborns out of the index if you really wanted to. Blasters received a bonus. So even at 18, they're at the neg 4 and D6 damage instead of D3. So a little bit more on the risk versus reward side to kind of jump in there. That was the biggest changes, I guess, I personally saw. There may be more. Leave them in the comments. Help everybody out. I'm not as super familiar with the Dark Eldar as I should be. I just never really played them, and to be honest, never really played against them that much. But now that I'm reading through it, I'm like, man, these guys seem super, super fun. So let's talk for our second tips and tactics about keywords, because that's stuff you definitely need to be aware of. The keywords are kind of what powers a lot of these abilities and bubble effects and just everything in general here. It seems to be keyed to a specific keyword. And just like we saw with the Tau book, that, you know, some stuff is infantry that you wouldn't expect, and some stuff wasn't even a battle suit, like with the Storm Surge. It's very important to pay attention to those in here, because a lot of the bubble abilities only affect witches, only affect cabal, only affect coven. When you have these 3 different things all happening all at once, it's very important to check all that stuff out. Now, the majority of stuff, faction keyword, Eldari, Drukhari. In theory, other things could, you know, interface with these because they are Eldari, like the Avatar, for instance. You know, depending on how you do it, could have a profound effect on this book. But we're not really just getting this book knocked out and out of the way and not pairing it up with anything else. Of course, we haven't even seen the Harlequin book yet, so who knows what kind of shenanigans is on the way with that one, right? It's just very important to note, you know, even right here with the Succubus Witch Cult, you know, even looking at if it's the fight phase, if it's overall, if it's just to hit, all those things are super important. Another super important thing to remember is modified rolls versus unmodified rolls, because there's so much stuff in here that gives you modifiers that if they didn't specify modified or unmodified, which they do in a lot of cases, it would just be ridiculous, like abilities and stuff. So make sure reread everything, just slow down, reread everything, and try to take it from there. Third on deck, we're really getting into a lot of the nuts and bolts, which makes this Codex tick, and some of the stuff that you can do that's crazy. So this one's going to be more about like the witches and combat drugs. A lot of things people are already talking about, but some things that, you know, we're going to try to at least explain a little bit better. So combat drugs right off the bat are manipulatable. Remember, they said that, hey, you can pick one of each of these, and then you can start over, just like the Satan powers, but you have to pick one of each one. So in theory, you would have to take multiple witch squads. Now, there's a way to game that the way that you want. Like, remember what we just said about keywords? There's a lot of stuff in here that's air quotes witch that has combat drugs. Like, depending on how you want to set up your army, witch or reavers are actually witch cult. So it's possible that if you're going to take, you know, some reavers and witches, and you want to, you know, go for a bunch of attacks and reroll attacks and attack again and stuff that you can do with witches, that you could dump some of the buster powers or drugs off on the reavers, which, I mean, to be honest, maybe +2 move characteristic is good for a reaver and stuff like that. Or maybe even a plus toughness. Or maybe you want to just give, you know, just stack things. It's really hard to kind of, without a solid army list, but these are just some of the ideas that you can do. I would imagine that a lot of folks are going to want their witches to actually have +1 attack, because there's a way that you can get them up to 6 attacks, as far as I can tell, and, you know, do some pretty serious damage. You almost don't need the strength buff, because you have ways to manipulate the wound roll. So if you have a couple of squads of witches and you want multiple +1 attack, there's a couple of ways to go about it. Like I said, you can put some of these drugs on some of the other units that might be in your army, and then make sure that once you get to the end and you start over, that 2 of your witch squads would have that +1 attack. There's also a way to do it with a relic, which we're going to show you right here. The file Boucher allows your succubus to take 2. So that kind of gets you 1 bump ahead, depending on what kind of units you're taking right there. And they actually stack on the succubus as well, but it is random, so read all of that. But that's just another way to kind of game it right there. Now, there is some other stuff that you can do as well. There's a Stratagem, which is pretty good. It's called Hyperstim Backlash. And what this allows you to do is double the bonus that the combat drugs are conferring. So if, for instance, you're getting +1 attack, you're getting +2 attacks. Now, there is a drawback. You do have to roll for each model in your squad, and I'll roll 1. They suffer a mortal wound. But you could, in theory, kind of tag team this, depending on which coven or which cult you're taking, with another stratagem that allows you to get dudes back. If you kill another model, then you actually get the guys back that you leave in the morale phase. But these guys just die, so you might not be able to get them back. But if you thin out your herd too far, you might want to think about that. But it's keyed to a specific cult. So there's that. And then there is, of course, another one that's pretty cool. And this is more keyed to the witches themselves. Cult of Strife, which is one of the obsessions that you can take. If a Cult of Strife unit has destroyed an enemy unit in either the shooting or the fight phase, both of which are theoretically possible, because remember I showed you with the keywords there, use a stratagem after the attacking unit has consolidated. The enemy unit, if the enemy unit was destroyed in the shooting phase, you can immediately shoot an additional time this phase. If the enemy unit was destroyed in the fight phase, you can immediately fight an additional time this phase. It is 3 command points. It is kind of steep, but we just showed you a way to get, if you take the 3 patrols, you get 4, you get 3 just for making your army. There's some more command point shenanigans that you could do, but it is a little pricey, but it would allow you to attack again after you had piled in. So if there's something behind them, or you know, you kind of, depending on how you're working it, that can be pretty powerful as well. Now, the witches themselves are 8 points each. Let's see if we can. They are troops. There we are. So the witches themselves are 8 points each. They have 2 base attacks, but with their, what is it? The blade, some kind here. They get +1 attack. So they're going to be at 3. Right there with the combat drugs, they can be at 4. With another combat drugs, they can be at 5. And then, of course, I think there was another thing. Give them another +1 attack that we'll get to here in a second. I already forgot what it. Oh, that's what it is. It's the obsession. See, I even have notes here, and I'm forgetting this stuff. So the obsession right here for the Cult of Strife, which is Lilith's cult, believe it or not, is going to give you +1 attack any turn in which they charged or were charged or make a heroic invention. So that's how we get it up to 6. So that's some shenanigans you can, of course, do with the combat drugs themselves. Now, if you're looking to just kind of field a straight witch kind of army, you might want to go more for this one, because this allows you to reroll failed charge rolls for a unit with this obsession, which probably means if you're just taking a dedicated witch army, you're not going to have any manipulation for the power for pain. So chances are you won't be able to assault turn 1 if that's your thing, and there is ways to do that, and we are going to talk about that here in a minute. That's one of our key points. But this seems to be more well-rounded just for those type armies. But if you're trying to do a combo type thing, then Cult of Strife seems to be pretty strong because it has a lot of advantages right there. Fourth on our key points is the Power from Pain chart itself, which is, before we start breaking into other things, definitely we're talking about, if we just talked about combat drugs, we should definitely talk about the Power from Pain. Now, the Power from Pain is pretty good. It's the same as in the index, but there's a lot more benefits and stuff in here. So the first one, we already talked about this, 6 up, feel no pain. Second one is going to be, you get the bonus, reroll the bonus move when it advances or charges. Excuse me, reroll the move. This is a bonus that has to be converted to their data sheet right there. Now, this is huge because there's certain ways to game this and have a lot of these already on the turn 1. So, like, for instance, the Architects of Pain stratagem. This allows you to choose a unit from your army that has the Power from Pain ability until the end of the battle round. That unit treats the current battle round as being 1 higher than it actually is when determining what bonuses it gains from the Power from Pain table. And this is cumulative with other effects such as the Cabal of Blackheart's Thirst for Power obsession, which is definitely worth mentioning as well, because that one also allows you to double stack. So you go from a double stack to potentially a triple stack with that right there. Not necessarily the best for witches, but this allows you to treat it as 1 higher as well. But maybe, perhaps, what's even better about this is the fact that even if they do not have the Power from Pain, they're a Cabal keyword, remember, keywords are huge, then they gain the Inured to Suffering bonus right off the bat. So vehicles and things that might not already have such an ability as a 6 up feel no pain, a lot of them have invulnerable saves and such, now get it. Boom, right there. That's kind of crazy if you think about it. So some key ideas there for synergy. And the reason you might want to stack this stuff is you're like, why do I care about rerolling charge distances on turn 1? Well, it is possible that you could get some first turn assaults in and things like that on turn 1. Now, that actually is next up for our key points. So our 5th key point is some assault and deployment kind of shenanigans that you can do. There's a couple of strats that you can do, and also one obsession that's pretty good. And I guess another, you could combo it with another strat to, now that I actually think about it. So first up, you've got the Screaming Jets and Webway Portal stratagems here. Now, you cannot use these together. You have to use them before the game, and if you use one, you can't use the other. And both are very different, but both have their definite advantages. Screaming Jets, you can play multiple times because it's a before the game type deal. So you can put transports, any Drukhari vehicle from your army that can fly, goes high in the sky. Instead of placing it on a battlefield, you can embark troops on it, and they are up there as well. And then at the end of any of your movement phases, you set it up more than 9 inches away from enemy units. So they basically deep strike in at any point in the game that you want. Obviously, don't leave them on there too long, or they might count as casualties, you know, per the rules. Webway Portal's a little different. You can only do it to 2 maximum for 3 command points, 2 maximum units. So there is a max to it, and they basically do the same thing, but it's not keyed to vehicle with fly. It's any Drukhari infantry, biker, or beast. So 2 very different ways to go about it. And now you're kind of seeing, you might be seeing why you would want to reroll your charge distances on turn 1, because you can drop this at the end of the movement phase, reroll your charge distance, perhaps. It's pretty powerful. Like, there's some stuff you can do, and there's actually a way to kind of negate Overwatch too that we're going to touch on once we start getting into some of the units right there. Also, another nifty thing, and it doesn't necessarily get you closer, it just might add to survivability, is it allows you, just like the Eldar one that Eldrad used to do, allows you to just pick 3 of Cabal Poison Tongue units and deploy them back anywhere you want inside of your deployment zone before the game begins for 2 command points. So if you are running that Cabal, you could get a little tricksy with it. There is another one too, Enhanced Aether Sails. Use a stratagem when a Raider or Ravager in your army advances. Add 8 inches to that model's move characteristic for that phase instead of rolling a die. Wouldn't necessarily combo off with the Webway Portal or the Deep Striking in, because it happens at the end of your movement phase, so you wouldn't technically have a chance to advance. However, if you have stuff on the board, this could key well to catch up with those things you just brought in. So a lot of different ways to get a lot of things into what might be, you know, a kill shot or an alpha strike kind of position, or perhaps to just hunker down and hide on some objectives with things like, you know, Oven Homunculi or something like that. And speaking of Homunculi, that is our 6th key point today. First off, they got their obsessions. There's only 3 of them. I think the biggest one we're taking would probably be the Prophets of Pain, or Prophets of Flesh, kind of Swords of Pain. Conversely, Urian Raykarth is keyed to them, so that's kind of a win. He's pretty good for 90 points. I like him. If a model has this obsession, the invulnerable save conferred by the Insensible to Pain, that's the first ability on a Power for Pain chart, is increased to 4 up. So it goes from a 6 up Feeling of Pain, 4 up Feeling of Pain, which is pretty strong in and of itself. Because even if you have an average of a 4-up save, which I don't think any of the homunculi do actually, now that I think about it, maybe the Pain Engine, which are homunculi, that, so you have a 4-up save and then a 4-up Feeling of Pain, and the possibility to have an invulnerable, which you could take instead of the save, then a Feeling of Pain. It's pretty clutch. Like, the aggregate of those dice rolls is much higher than it seems, believe me. It's kind of crazy. So there's that. Then the bubble abilities, which we're going to talk more about the bubbles here next in our next point. But the homunculi bubble ability within 6 is to give out +1 toughness, which is great for their engines, the Talus and the Chronos. Get them up to toughness 7, so they're more like on par with, you know, a heavier armored vehicle instead of a light armored vehicle as far as damage mitigation. Now the Warlord trait, there's a couple of them that I think is worth taking, and you're going to see where you're going to be able to combo off Warlord traits a little bit that might be worth doing in kind of like a combined arms fashion. So you've got Master Artisan, which is re-roll the inured to suffering rolls of 1 for friendly coven within 6 of this Warlord. So you go from having that we just talked about a 4-up Feel No Pain, re-roll 1s to that 4-up Feel No Pain, and you can have, there's a way to combo your Warlord traits where you can have theoretically both of these in the same army. If you do, then you could also have, once per battle, you can reroll a single hit roll, wound roll, saving throw, or damage roll for your Warlord. In addition, if your army is Battleforged, roll a d3 before the battle begins. You gain a number of additional command points as a result. We're going to talk about it too. There's a way to game this that I think Games Workshop will probably be savvy to and probably shut down. But for non-ridiculous win-at-all-cost play, this is a nice resiliency that not only gives you command points, gives you a free reroll, but also bubbles out and gives you a reroll 1s off of already 4, because this is the exact obsession that gives you that 4 up right here. So you could take this and not take this, but this is key to Urian, so just be aware. You just got to read all the things. It's crazy. There's so much to read in here. It's just straight crazy. Now there is one little relic. I know this is going long on the homunculi stuff, but I want you to be aware of this too. We just talked about some of the assaulting tricks and some of the deep strike deployment tricks. But something you need to be aware of in case you're trying to take down a high priority target through the use of assault, like say a storm surge. Those things are bananas. Where are the? Here we go. The Vexator Mask. Eat the prophets of flesh. I feel like there's a combo here. These guys are really good. Whoever they are, they're really good. Enemy units cannot fire Overwatch at the Baer. In addition, at the start of each fight phase, select an enemy unit within 6 of the Baer. That unit cannot fight until all other units that are able to have done so. If the unit has the ability that allows it to fight, then they key off based on priority, etc, etc, etc. No, that's the only thing you really need to worry about right there. So what's cool about this is it's obviously keyed to a specific homunculi, but he can jump out of one of those portals, charge in ahead, gate Overwatch, and then anything else that wanted to hit that same target, easy game, easy life right there, and hopefully take it down. So a lot of, and you might start noticing this too as we talk, there's, you know, the Blood Angels have a similar thing. You know, we talked about like the misdirection, that's something from Eldar, obviously portals from Eldar. The that's all that we've talked about yet, but we're going to talk more about things that are very similar, and I'm sure you can draw a lot more similarities as we get going as well. And next up, we're going to talk about overlapping bubbles or abilities for this army that goes back to what we were talking about a little while ago with keywords. So first off, I'm going to try to run down all of the stuff that, or all the abilities that are going to benefit other models in this unit, not just themselves. Now, traditionally, you know, we've always seen like the leader guys always give a bubble reroll and things, and you know, that's been pretty traditional. But there's a little bit kind of extra ones in here that I think are definitely worth talking about. So first off, you got your Archon. Archon's great because it's blanket reroll hits of 1 for friendly Cabal units within 6 of this model. So Cabal, not keyed to any specific thing, within 6 of this model. I think most of them are all within 6 of this model, to be honest. Drazar does it for Incubi as well, as long as they're within 6. Lilith has perhaps her, I guess she doesn't. But yeah, she does for Cult of Strife. That makes sense because she is Cult of Strife. So she does it for in the fight phase for reroll 1s. Cult of Strife. So does the Succubus, but keyed to Cult instead of Cult of Strife specifically. I guess I forgot to mention the no escape rules when we were talking about witches there too. This is a great way to prevent models from falling back and getting away, so to speak, from I guess like combat and things like that. Kind of set it, you can use it to your advantage too in a lot of different ways that we really don't have time to talk about today. So roll off whenever an infantry unit within 1 of any enemy models with this ability wishes to fall back. That unit can only fall back if the player controlling it wins the roll off. So a little bit better of a chance that things like infantry bubbles aren't going to fall back. But again, you know, there's ways to game it where you can have like three models around 1 model in the middle, and there's no way they can actually fall back. If you trap at least 1 model, then they can't get away. But this is solid to have as well. Then we've got so we did Archon, Succubus, Drazar. Oh, let's talk about 2 of my favorite units in this book now. Well, one being the Talus, but we're not going to really talk about that, and the other being the Chronos. And the Chronos is really cool because if a model, excuse me, it's the Spirit Probe ability, reroll wound rolls of 1 for a Drukhari, keyed to Drukhari, not Coven, not Cult, not Cabal, all Drukhari units in the fight phase where they are within 6 of a friendly Chronos with Spirit Probe. Huh, that's pretty cool. That'll help out the old war effort there. Plus, remember, one of the Power from Pains, I believe it's the 3rd one, is +1 to hit as well. Double check that. +1 to hit rolls made for units with this bonus in the fight phase. So +1 to hit, fight phase from 3rd go around, but remember there's ways to game that as well. And wait, we haven't hit them all quite yet. There is another one as well, and that is the Relic for the Cabal of the Blackheart. Probably one of the better ones out there because now it allows the Archon to reroll wound rolls of 1 for friendly Cabal of the Blackheart units within 6. So reroll 1s to hit for Cabal within 6, and now reroll wounds of 1 within 6 as well. So that he's basically like a Space Marine commander and a lieutenant all in one. Normally that's like 140 points, give or take, just for those abilities in the Space Marine army. Probably a little bit more, probably like 160, 170 with weapons. But you get what I'm saying here. For 70 points on an Archon, that's pretty huge and definitely worth noticing. Number 8 on our list is Anti-Psyker abilities that you should be aware of. There's 2 in the book. The first one being the Crucible of Malediction, which has a long and storied history amongst the Dark Eldar for sure. So this kind of does what it did before. Select a homunculi from your army. Roll a d6 for each Psyker within 12 of it. On a 4-up, the unit being rolled for suffers d3 mortal wounds. You can only use the stratagem once per battle. It's 2 command points right there. Definitely worth mentioning, worth knowing to use if you're going up against a psychic heavy army. Smite spam, kind of not as big as it used to be, but definitely worth, you know, kind of keeping that in the pocket and knowing that, hey, I could pop this out. Another reason to take a combined arms force, perhaps with a homunculi as well. Then there's the Helm of Spite. And remember, if the Psyker dies, they do mortal wounds as well from perils, not necessarily from this. This just does mortal wounds. Now, if something dies from perils, which you're about to see here, Baer can attempt to deny one psychic power in each enemy's psychic phase the same manner as a Psyker. In addition, each time the Baer makes a successful deny to witch, the Psyker that attempted to manifest the power suffers perils of the war. So not only might it get shut down, but they're going to suffer perils. And if you die from perils, it's automatically shut down. But remember, it radiates out and does mortal wounds. So something definitely worth talking about. Now, one thing I forgot, I had it all set up to talk about, and then I just completely didn't even write it down on my list, but I have a huge stack of them, are things to make the Dark Eldar themselves more survivable. So we're going to squeeze that in here right now because I feel like it's very important to talk about, even though we kind of shoehorned it in. So this is going to be technically our 9th kind of point, I guess. So let's leave this. Yes, this is going to be our 9th point to talk about. So we got the Black Cornucopians, which you might notice is very similar to Wave of Traders. This allows you to pick a unit of Prophets of Flesh racks from your army, remove it from the battlefield, set it up again at full starting strength. I believe you can have 10 of them within 6 of the edge of the battlefield and more than 9 away from enemy models for 2 command points. Pretty strong, helps keep your guys alive, but it's done during the movement phase, so you might have to have some stuff that makes them, you know, not break, you know, command points, or perhaps you're already at that point in your Power from Pain. Athletic Aerialists use this just before a Cult of the Red Grief unit consolidates. Instead of moving towards the nearest enemy, the unit consolidates up to 6 inches towards the nearest Cult of the Red Grief transport from your army. If all models in the unit end this move when free to transport, the unit may immediately embark upon it if it has the capacity, even if they disembark from the transport this turn. For 2, definitely helps keep them alive. The witches or the cult. Yeah, cult. Not necessarily witches, but probably witches. Hunt from the shadows. Use the stratagem when a Drukhari infantry unit from your army is receiving the benefit of cover is targeted in the shooting phase. They get +2 instead of +1. It's 1 command point. Definitely helps keep them alive. Cruel Deception. Use the stratagem when a Drukhari unit from your army falls back. That unit can still shoot and charge this turn. So, I gotcha. 2 command points. Fire and Fade. This is kind of like a faux soul burst. It allows you, after your army shoots in the shooting phase, you can immediately move up to 7 as if it were your movement phase, cannot advance. However, it can charge. It cannot charge in the same turn that it does so. So a little bit more restrictions, more balanced, more perhaps like soul burst should be for 1 command point. And lightning fast reactions. Use the stratagem when a Drukhari infantry vehicle or biker from your army, excluding Urian and Homunculi Coven, is targeted by ranged or melee weapons. Subtract 1 from hit rolls made against that unit for the rest of the phase, and that's a 2 command pointer. So there's some ideas on how to keep your guys alive long enough to close. And remember, there's also enhanced Aether Sails to boost them up as far as Raiders and Ravagers if you don't use the Portal or the Screaming Jets stratagem. Number 9 is Command Point Regen. Always something that's hot on people's minds, and unfortunately there isn't a lot of it in this book. You can get, you know, starting out, if you take the 3 patrols, you'll start out with 7. We showed you the trick with the homunculi. to get D3. There may or may not be a rules as written loop to get multiples of that, depending if you have the points to field the models, which we're going to talk about coming up here shortly. That aside, there is this one for the Cabal of the Blackheart. While your Warlord is alive, roll a d6 each time you or your opponent spends a command point to use the stratagem. You gain 1 command point for each roll of a 6. You figure most people have, you know, around 10 of these things. You may not. If you're taking the patrol kind of type deal, you might have 7. Might get a couple more with the Cabal. So say you have 9, your opponent has 9. We'll just make it easy math. That's 18. So chances are, at some point when they're spending those 18, you're going to get 3 back yourself. If they have command point regen, there's a possibility you might get 4 back out of that. Not too bad to have as far as a Warlord trait goes, when my picks for Warlord traits were pretty much these 4 to begin with that are worth taking. So I feel like if you can do it, you might as well take that one right there. I think we got a little out of order with our key points, but that's okay. This is actually number 11, and this is miscellaneous and stratagems that just didn't really fall into any other category that I just thought were pretty neat. And this is the kind of the maybe exploit, maybe not exploit that we're going to talk about. Well, first up, let's talk about Architects from Pain. Let's not get too crazy quite yet. Let's talk about Agents of Vec. This one's kind of something we've never seen before. This is the ability to negate a stratagem. You use this stratagem after your opponent has spent command points to use the stratagem, but before the effects of the stratagem are resolved. On a d6, roll a d6. On a 1, it goes off as normal. On a 2 to 5, your opponent's command points are refunded, but the stratagem they were using is not resolved and cannot be attempted again in this phase. On a 6, the stratagem they are attempting to use is not resolved and cannot be attempted again in this phase, and the command points spent are lost. So theoretically, you can attempt to do it, and then I guess if it's blocked, you can attempt to do it again. Theoretically, because it never happened, so it never went off, I guess is what we're saying there. So I guess if it never went off, you can't try to get the command points back, which is what I'm assuming. That just seems fair play, right? Cannot be used to affect stratagems used before the battle or during deployment. So this could come into play for a lot of clutch things when you just need something to happen. It's going to cost you command points, but it might shut down your opponent. Imagine they try to get Gilmain back up and fail the roll. Command point reroll. Oh, wait a minute. Negate the command point reroll. Theoretically, you could do it again, but that's almost like, and I'm gonna make a football reference here, American football, trying to ice the field goal kicker before the game-winning kick. So, pretty savage. It could get your opponent kind of a little bit on tilt, I guess. Maybe it's not good for fun games, but it's definitely cool in the regards to it's something outside of the box we've never seen before from Games Workshop, and that excites me because Games Workshop is not sitting on their laurels. The design team is coming up with all sorts of craziness, and I love it. Not this one. Use the stratagem. This is failure is not an option. This is the one I was telling you about, that if you, if some of your guys flee, you can elect to, before you remove them, perform either a shooting attack or a close combat attack again, as if it were the shooting or fight phase. If enemy models are slain by these attacks, none of these models flee from your unit. If no enemy models were slain, the fleeing models are removed as normal. So say, for instance, you lose a whole bunch of your squad, whatever. I don't know if it says shooting phase, so if they get shot off the table and you lose like 9 dudes, and perhaps just by chance there's something within splinter pistol range or whatever within 12, and you just got to kill one model. Pop this off, you kill one model, and you get those guys back, just like nothing happened. For one stratagem point, or for one command point, I think it's pretty solid. Of course, you do it during a morale check, so you won't really know if, you know, kind of... It kind of sets up a lot of interesting scenarios. It's almost like, again, a soul burst, but more predictable and more, I guess, fair, because there's a cost to it. So you can either make a shooting attack or make a close combat attack before you remove them during the morale phase, which could happen in either turn. I like it. I think that's another really cool ability that seems fair, but could definitely keep your opponents guessing. Now, speaking of guessing, keeping your opponents guessing, Alliance of Agony. This one's got everybody scratching their head. I don't know what's going on with this thing. Maybe we'll see an FAQ on it. Maybe none of this matters. Maybe this was rules as intended. I don't know. But here's what's up with it. Use the stratagem before the battle if your warlord is an Archon. So you pick your warlord, he's an Archon, and good to go. Choose up to 1 homunculi and up to 1 succubus from your army. Generate a warlord trait for each character you choose. Note that these characters are only regarded as your warlord for the purposes of these warlord traits. So, where it says something like, for your warlord, he would be considered, the homunculi would be considered your warlord for the purposes of this ability. So this reroll would be keyed to your warlord, which really isn't your warlord. He's your foe warlord. Same with the succubus ones, etc., like the stim addict. You could theoretically have multiple models with that. Now, there's nothing in any of this wording that I've read that says you can only have 1 warlord trait. I'm not for or against that this works or this doesn't work. I think initially this is great for that patrol detachment bonus. So, hey, I'm going to take some cults, I'm going to take some covens, I'm going to take some cabals. I'm going to make a pretty cool list that works well together with some cool homunculus stuff, you know, maybe some racks because they're troops, perhaps some pain engines because they give bonuses, they can be filled in 3s, the 4-up feel no pain, the reroll 1s, all that stuff we talked about is great. Witches do what witches do, or maybe you want to take reavers, all that stuff's great. Cabal, they're great too, you know, just to have troops holding stuff. Get your overall warlord of the Archon. Now, here's where it may or may not become abusive, and that's the fact that if you have the points, because a succubus is roughly 50 points, a homunculi is roughly 70, and I believe your Archon is roughly 70 as well. Urian Raykarth is 90, and I think that's the only. Lilith is more too. I didn't even look. What's Lilith go for? Lilith goes for 80 as well. Okay, so there's that. But theoretically, if you have all of those, or depending on how this is why it gets even more down the rabbit hole. It says up to 1 could also, in theory, depending on who you ask, also mean 0. So if you have the points or you don't have the points and you just want to say, well, I'm not going to take a succubus, I'll take a homunculi because it says up to 1, which could also mean 0, then in theory, if you could take multiple warlord traits, which may or may not be the case, you could keep taking this and keep getting D3 command points. I don't know if that's the way it was supposed to be. Maybe it is, because remember, they don't have a lot of ways to get more command points. They're basically stuck at that 7 if you're taking the raiding force kind of 3 patrol detachment. I don't know what's going on, but I'm sure we will find out for sure once the FAQ drops how exactly all of that interfaces. So there's a lot of things, a lot of reading. Overall, I'm not going to give you any army lists, unfortunately. That was kind of our last key points. But I would like to point out the fact that there are some ways to manipulate. I like the pain engines. I think they're super fun and super resilient. They were nightmares in the past to deal with. And I really like the fact that depending on which coven you take, then you can adjust their armor piercing, their AP values in close combat. You can't do it for the one that we've been advocating, Urian's one. But here's the Talus. But in theory, if you could get this scalpel up to -3, you could get this Talus gauntlet up to -4 with a lot of attacks right here that do some serious damage. Racks are great because they can kind of get their troops, so they can jump in there, they can come out of holes and things and do some crazy damage with this liquefier gun. Or excuse me, I like the Ossifactor. This one's probably better. It's assault 1, but it's poison, so it's always wounded on 4s, but you add 2 to your wound rolls. Remember to apply modifiers correctly. -3 AP, but if it gets through, 10 of those shooting at something could definitely drop it. But again, if they do have the power from pain, So they would be getting, at least on the first turn and every turn thereafter, they're 4 up, feel no pain. They have a 6 up regular, but a 5 up invulnerable. So it's more resilient than you would think. Believe me, when you start seeing stuff like that. The same thing with those pain engines. Like, they can just really do a lot of damage. Witches having the 6 attacks seem pretty good. Rerolling 1s seems pretty key there. That's why you kind of need, you know, the engines to kind of augment them to go in and help them, because you know, they're strength 3, so so they're a little not as strong as everybody else, but there's that. And there's a lot of different ways to deliver all this stuff. The venoms are ridiculous. There's reavers, you can set them up, some of the stuff we talked about to do first turn charges, because remember, if you can do after you advance, you can charge. You can also add 8 to your advances here with this one. So there's a lot of different ways to set it up depending on which obsessions you take. You can get some first turn charges in. Venoms are just gunboats with their weapons and stuff, and all of it's pretty much poison for the most part. Rapid fire 3 splinter cannons at well, it would be 6 shots at 18. Twin splinter rifle at 24. Like, they're just solid choices for their points. And there's a lot of abilities and stuff that really help them. Survivability on the table. And this isn't even talking about pairing them with Harlequins or Eldari yet too, because there's a lot of benefits to just blanket Eldari units, which the majority of stuff in here is. But we're gonna end there, because that's about everything I can get out off my chest that I've noticed that I think is super important to give you those ideas, to get those hobby juices going, and kind of get you guys in the right direction, or maybe, you know, show you some stuff that you might have overlooked. I might have misspoke. It wouldn't be the first time. Please correct me in the comments below, per the norm. So that's it for this one. Thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. There will be, as always, a little transcript of our top points below in the description if you want to kind of flip through those. They're always generally there. Some folks are like, "What did you say? I don't know what points you made. You just talked a lot." Well, they're in the description. I don't timestamp them. I apologize, but we didn't do that. I tried to cut a little bit more this, so hopefully that will be good to go there. So that's it for this one. Like I said, make sure you work out those hobby muscles. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you can be the very first to like and comment on all our posts.
Deleted scenes, bonus content, and all the interviews and post-game wrap-up videos can be located in the Hall of Veterans on thelongwar.net. Visit thelongwar.net today and try a week completely free with no strings attached. That's not all. Thelongwar.net is also your hobby resource for exclusive early access with an ad-free experience to all your favorite videos. Members of the Hall of Veterans gain early exclusive access to multiple hobby videos.